this semester, I think you're starting to get one step ahead of me that I'm not gonna give you the answer and we're gonna have to think about it and come up with something. I don't care if it's wrong, I just want you thinking, right? If you don't do nothing, it will die. If you don't put semen in, it will not get pregnant, okay? So you got to do something, right? If I'm gonna go up there, I'm gonna go down swinging, right? I'm not gonna sit in the dugout. So we gotta go play the game. But when you guys, so we're one, critical thinking diagnostically, thinking intuitively. But number two, when we're talking about food animals or any herd-related species, you talk about production medicine or management, you guys really have to begin doing what I call putting on your herd hat. Okay? Most of us probably have small animal training or have had a pet, and it is very individualized. You have a client who has a dog who has a problem, right? Yesterday, a client brought me a lamb, but 7 have already died, and there's 60 more. So this is not just a problem about lamb number 8. All right? So thankfully, you'll have a colleague that's about to graduate. He's done all the things he needs to do, except just behave between now and May 4th, and he'll get on out of here. But he very quickly put on his herd hat, and I asked him, what do you want to do? And he said, meat crops. Got a live lamb sitting there looking at us. And the man's really sad because 7 have already died. And Russell tells him he wants to kill him. And Russell was absolutely correct. If we don't want 60 more dead lambs, let's figure out what is wrong today. And let's euthanize this lamb, and let's send it to the state diagnostic lab for probably less than $100. You can get every test run under the sun as you can get run on a sheep. All right? I'm not a sheep expert. I don't pretend to be, don't plan to be, didn't play one on TV. I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so let the sheep people figure out the sheep problem. I know it's a problem. I know it's a problem. But we think we got some, pointed in the right direction by using our herd hat. The question is, I may have said this before, but I very quickly have to assess, is this her problem or is this a herd problem? Okay? He was worried about her. I'm more worried about the 60 others. She's probably going to die. She's about 12, 13 days old. She was emaciated. She was severely dehydrated. She had 103 fever. Okay? She's probably going to die. The better investment is not to put medications in her, in her that would confound a definitive diagnosis. Okay? I don't want her to survive long enough to kill off some of whatever that, bacteria is that's causing this pneumonia in her, or whatever that situation is. So, anyway, hopefully she can get the dropsy right now, and this guy will get a good answer. So, put on your herd hat, and we need to start, as we walk through this, I'll be the devil's advocate a little bit, and I'll be the most ridiculous client that you've ever had. Because they'll do some ridiculous things. Like I told you this morning about a guy lying about cows coming back in the heat so we could get, a whole new herd of cows out there for free. People are ridiculous. And they will lie to you, and they will lie to you. And it's great because some people hate all the kids being there. I love it because the kids will tell the truth. And they're like, so, is Brownie eating anything out of the ordinary? No, he just eats Little Caesars, moistini, and what about them shrimp we gave him last night? They're like smacking their little kid around the face. And the dog's got on a collar that's probably more expensive than the poor kid's whole wardrobe. Anyway, the worst are the small, the South American camel. No offense if you own South American camels, but I'd love to have a conversation, and I want to come see your place. I do. I really want to see how you live life, because it's different. It is different, especially, never mind, I'm gonna stop there. I already got enough office referrals, waiting on me, I don't need another one. All right, so let's talk about this social. This is a real case, over, at Auburn, my residency. They do CPCs instead of grand rounds, but it's the same premise. 15, 20-minute presentation on a case, and we're trying to stimulate some critical thinking. Cow number 121, really I think she was a heifer, but old Dr. Tweedu's, him probably graduated in 2012. He's probably like a real veterinarian by now. So here's what we had. We had this 2-year-old Hereford mix, female, weighed about 800 pounds, and she was a staunching 3 out of 9 on her body condition score. All right. Good, bad, ugly. Pushing ugly, right? Pushing ugly. That means if she weighed 800 pounds, she probably had 100 pounds of cash in her. So when do we really want these female bovines to calf? How old should they be? 5 to 2 years of age. In a normal production system, we want them to have a calf as a 2-year-old by their 2nd birthday. So in order to do that, when does she have to get pregnant? 1 and 3 months. Some people call that 15 months. Right? So either way you want to look at it, 1 plus 3, 1 year plus 3 months, 15 months, whatever you want to do it. 18 months less 3 months, however you want to say that. But yeah, we need to get her pregnant around by 15 months. So back up, when is she going to go through puberty? When can I actually breed her? So what did we just say that discerns onset of puberty? Body weight is the most universal component. What's that magic number? 60, 65%, 2/3. What else could be? Yeah, 65% of adult body weight. So when they reach 65% of adult body weight. So you're talking about 1,000-pound cows. We're talking about when they get that 600-700 pound range. We're going to breed. All right. What else can affect age of onset of puberty? Nutrition. Remember, sex is a luxury. You got to be in good enough shape to participate. All right. Genetics play a role in that. There's definitely breed variation. What other environmental factors may exacerbate that or slow that down? Temperature. So seasonal. Especially if we were seasonally polyestrous, cow not a problem. But we actually do see some seasonal differences. It's not talked about very much. Seasonality in cattle, as far as when these animals are born, calves tend to be a little bit bigger that are actually born in the springtime, because they had most of that gestation over the cooler parts of the year, and so in the hotter part of the year, you can imagine there's more vasodilation and more trying to relieve heat, and there's actually less nutrients and less blood supply going to the uterus. So those calves tend to not be as big as they could be. So we, calving around here in the fall, actually our birth weights are probably skewed a little bit smaller than what they could be. Does that make sense? Not enough, again, one of those not statistically significant numbers, but if you want to split hairs, that's the truth of the matter. So yes, temperature could indeed have a fact or a play on that. Any of our seasonality creatures, for sure, we talked about, some breeds of goats, if they are born, they're going to be short day breeders. September to October, they get fired up and breeding season starts. Some of those little pygmy goats can be born in that winter, and she can already be in heat in that first short day season. Okay, so it does depend on light and temperature and those kind of things. All right, so does this 2-year-old Hereford that's 800 pounds and a 3 of 9. Is that hitting any of your marks? Anything you like or don't like about that?
Why not 11 pounds?
So if she's 800 pounds and she's a 3 out of 9, right? Where would you want her to be? So what body condition score would you rather her have? 5 or 6, hopefully, yeah, 6 heading down the stretch, right? Because she's going to lose some body condition when she starts nursing that calf. She's going to lose a lot of body condition as a heifer. So we would, 6, maybe a lean 7, okay? But we don't need her being any less than 5, really. So yeah, she could probably should be toting another 200 or 300 pounds right now.
So instead to try to get her to a 6 weeks nurse, but also learn that into the consultation.
Yeah, and that's why I say if 6, maybe a lean 7, depending on how she's carrying, that weight. If she's a big frame cow and it's muscle, that's fine. There can be a fat 7s and skinny 7s. There can be lean 7s that are heavily conditioned. A lot of it is body conformation as well. With her though, she obviously needs. We all agree she should have been at least a 5. And we're probably not going to an average production system. Most of those cattle that we have for reproduction, they're probably, going to be 5s, standing around shape. There's no money in fat cattle. They're just staying on your place. Now there's money in fat cattle if you are selling them to be slaughtered. We got to grind up and make that hamburger meat somehow. But yeah, she should be at least a 5. And sometimes when I say how they're carrying it, you see cattle as they age, they tend to get a little bit pot-bellied like we do as we get older, and the spine shows a little bit more, and their flanks are a little turned in, as opposed to that, nice, pudgy, round, 2-year-old heifer that comes running through there. And you're right, you have to be very careful. So not only can we increase the reality of dystocias by over-conditioned heifers, what's the other big concern for an over-conditioned heifer? So maybe so fat that it could impair her reproductive soundness. As young as they are, probably not a huge reality. It is probably more of a reality in a little bit older cow that they're still wanting to push and be a donor, and she's just so obese. Okay, there is some problems with that. So increased dyssocia rates could decrease. It could interfere, with if they were being pasture bred. They're just fat and lazy, and it's too hot, and I'd rather lay in the shade or stand in the pond. That's a reality too. One other really big thing that's a bad no-no or a concern for fat heifers. So, talking about how do we carry that weight, where is one place that peripubertal and postpubertal females will carry a lot of fat deposition? Mammary tissue. Yep, mammary tissue. So prior to this mammary gland actually being activated and lactating, if we have an abnormal amount of fat contained within the space, which is supposed to be my udder, then I will actually limit the physical functionality because of size restriction on that gland. Okay? So I should be skin, a little bit of subcutaneous, and a lot of mammary gland. If we're skin and a whole lot of fat, you're going to be not very much mammary gland. The converse can be said the same for these really fat, long yearling bulls that people sell, and they're show class fat, and they actually have so much fat that they have fat going down into the neck of their scrotum, and they actually can't thermoregulate their testicles. So although he's a body condition 7 or 8, and he's super mud fat, and he's shiny, and he looks good, he walks like a penguin, but he looks good, and then you check his semen, and it's terrible. It's terrible, because he cannot thermoregulate his testicles because his spermatic cords are just over-insulated with fat. So that the whole fat heifer Okay, we really, have to pay attention to that. If you're talking about beef heifers, there are even some, production systems in around here locally, one, a very big, seed stock operation, not very far from here. They actually, will wean all of their heifer calves before 205. They will actually pull them 30 or 45 days early to prevent them from getting fat. And then they will separate them off. They leave the bulls on for another 30 or 45 days up until really a 205, so that they can get that free milk weight. But they'll pull those heifers off and then group them up very smallly and feed them very intentionally so that they don't get too fat. Okay, so there's a lot to do with it, but udder protection becomes a really big deal. Because if you're feeding heifers, if you're feeding beef calves, what do you expect? Not people in this area of the room, but everybody know what ADGs are? It's a really big, important number that we pay attention to when we're feeding cattle. Anybody know what ADG is? Average daily gain. So if we were to run this animal across the scales every day, or beginning of the feed trial, end of the feed period, per day that we fed this animal, what did we average gain in weight? Because if we know how much we fed them, and we know how much weight gain we got, then we can do feed efficiency determinants, okay? So about how much do you think an average beef steer would gain every day? And it's in pounds. A day? 30 pounds a day? So in a month, it could be 900 pounds? 5 pounds would be high. 22 and 3, okay? Just on grass, they could probably pick up 1.25 pounds, maybe 1.5 pounds on good, really good grass with good supplements. But throw some feed at them, put some extra carbs in front of them, put quality protein source. Remember when we're feeding ruminants, what are we actually doing? We are just giving those microbes a substrate to create what? BFA, volatile fatty acids. Well, one of the things those microbes need is that they need real protein to carry out their digestion of those fibrous substrates. So we can get away feeding cows a lot lower quality ingredients, and you'll see people have some pretty shoddy pastures and some pretty marginal quality hay, and then they'll have this tub out there of stuff to lick on that's 30% protein, and the cows will eat it, one a week, but they cost about $200. The cows are looking okay. And it's because they're putting enough protein in there to have a bug that can do a really efficient job of pulling every nutrient out of that poor quality fibrous material that we're actually buying. So you can cut some pretty big corners with ruminants, and we feed a lot of leftovers, candy, bread, things like that, and then the cows like it. They don't even want to take the wrappers off. They'll eat the wrappers too. They're not real picky. But we have to make sure they get a quality protein in there at some point in time, okay? So we got Miss Brownie here. So nothing abnormal about where she's at in life. Everybody okay with her trying to calve as a 2-year-old? Okay, we're just not real thrilled with her body condition. Okay, everybody agrees there? All right. So here's our history. Oh, he's just sitting there watching. All right, so here's the question. I know we haven't talked about bovine dystocia. We're going to talk about bovine dystocia a whole lot less on the day that we're scheduled to after today. If we see our cow go into labor, all right, first of all, tell me that there's how many stages of labor? 3 stages of labor, all right? What are they?
1, 2, and 3.
Start at 1, there's 2.
One's like behavioral, isn't it? Like nesting.
So we see behavioral, we see final movement or alignment or rotation of fetus towards the exit, right? And then stage 2 is what?
That's active labor.
Active labor. Stage 3, expulsion of all fluids and membranes. Okay? So our farmers are typically noticing stage 1 behavior. How long does that typically and normally last in the bogan? Mature, healthy cow, hour, give her an hour, and she's going to put a calf on the ground. All right? How long would you feel comfortable watching her and waiting on her? So, yeah, I mean, double, triple that. If she's, if she's not fretting and she's not, have a leg out and it's stuck and things go out and come back in and all that kind of stuff, yeah, we can give her a couple of hours as long as she doesn't seem distressed. Now, what about a heifer? Could take longer. It could take longer. Remember, they're kind of freaked out. Okay. There's a whole lot of things going on that I've not experienced before, and so this is kind of a weird moment in time for me. How long though are you going to be comfortable watching that fretting heifer? I'm gonna if I see her actively in labor, and I think she is truly in stage 2, I'm probably not going to give her more than 30 minutes or so. If she doesn't spit that thing out, then we're gonna have her caught, and we got to get her some help. Okay? Those heifers will get in trouble a lot more faster because they will refuse to push. They will refuse to participate in stage 2. It hurts. It hurts. Why would I keep doing that? Stop doing that. They just want to chill out. It's like when ladies having a baby, they say, "I'm push." Well, I do. That hurts. I'm going to stop. I don't want to do that. So we're not going to give her as long as we might watch, that happy, healthy, mature cow. Okay. So 10 o'clock, the owner noticed some legs already coming out of the vagina. All right. So where are we at? Yeah, we're really late 1. We're in active labor, right? So at 10:30, he ropes poor little old brownie, casted her, and attempted to pull the calf by using calf jack. Everybody knows what calf jack is, right? All right. So there's several different models. One of the more economical models is essentially a come-along. You know what a come-along is? It's a ratchet system. So you have a spring-loaded lever, you have a wheel, gears, and you have wrapping a metal cord around it. So every time you pull, click, 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 and the spring-loaded latch keeps it. If you don't pay attention, it'll hit you in the chin and it'll break the jaw. Or your metal cable will break and something will fly off and hit you in the forehead. Anyway, when used properly, they are very beneficial. Very beneficial. Okay. But most people don't understand, don't realize how strong they are. Okay. One of the Midwestern schools, it was like Nebraska or Oklahoma or something like that. One of the professors out there actually had some big heavy-weighted thing, and it was hundreds of pounds, 400, 500, 600 pounds. It was like a big block or something, and they actually got move this thing. So, 300-pound dudes try to move this thing and they couldn't do it. And he hooked up the come-along and his calf jack and he moved it. Okay? So you got hundreds of pounds of pressure here. Most clients don't use them properly. I really get excited though when I hear them tell me that they use the calf jack and not a four-wheeler or a truck or a tractor driven piece of equipment, okay? Because you just can't control the strength that you're using. There's too much give and take. Actually with a small heifer like this, it's actually kind of hard to use the jack sometimes because you move the whole heifer, and especially if they lay down. And so you like to try to do this standing, okay? So he tried, gave her 30 minutes or so, he caught her, tried, no luck. So About 4 o'clock, he shows up to your, and that's kind of early. Typically, it would be more like 4:47 would be the more ideal time that someone would like to show up for you. And there's both back limbs protruding from the vagina. How can you be convinced that it's both back limbs and not the front limbs? Fine, well, I mean, he's just on a trailer, you know, but you just see him back there. Do they only have certain new claws on certain feet? Do they do in Texas? True, yeah. So our do we have, you know, like a plantar fashion, you know, or do we have things upside down? And then that's a good, really good indication. Not a cardinal sign, but it's a really good indication. Really, we want to find a hock or a carcass, right? That's going to be our ultimate determinant. Do I reach, you know, pastern, fetlock, do I have a carcass or excuse me, yeah, pastern, fetlock, and do I have a hock or a carcass? And that lets us know for sure. A lot of times you will see this presentation and people will really, really panic because nothing's happening, and you see that, and you're actually like, okay, it's just backwards, okay, as your initial thought. People don't like backwards. What do we call backwards? Breech. So people are going to use breech. That is not a correct term in veterinary medicine, okay? Breech is a human term, and what they actually mean is butt first. So the hind limbs are flexed. You have coxofemoral flexion and retention, and this little baby is coming out bottom first. And they're not going to be able to fold it in half and come on out, okay? So that is really what true breech is. Just because they're coming backwards, it's not very typical for primates to be delivered backwards. It's not typical at all for the mare, but it maybe is normal up to a third, 30% of the time in bovine land, okay? It's really common with puppies and kittens and pigs, really just not that big of a deal. What happens though is because I don't have a head there, we oftentimes don't engage completely in the pelvis and we don't initiate Ferguson's reflex. You guys remember Ferguson's reflex? The stretching of that cervix and the vaginal or the pelvic canal and stimulating that oxytocin release mechanism with the brain. And so a lot of times these girls don't push because those back feet just kind of slide right out and there's really not as much pressure engaged around that pelvic inlet. So a lot of times I see these and I'm like, okay, cool, we can deal with that. So put the chains on the calf, and we tried to pull the calf, or Dr. Tweed now, Dr. Tweed tried to, old Tim tried to pull this calf, and no luck, okay? When they palpated the calf, they realized that actually it had no anal tone, and there was no real response to any stimulus. So what are you worried about? Worry about a dead calf, okay? Tell the owner. Calf might not make it. Do you tell them that it's dead? No. Just because something doesn't have anal tone, y'all won't have any anal tone when you get out of vet school either. It's still be alive, okay? All right, so that's not a definitive diagnosis there with just no anal tone. It'll come back about the time you have to make your first student loan payment. Okay? So give it 6 months. It'll be back when you get that first bill. I just thought of that. That was pretty good. So don't make these clients any promises. Okay? I'm always of the mindset that I'll, kind of prepare people for the worst, but we hope for the best. Okay? And you can tell them that you don't have any anal tone. You can tell them that you're concerned for the viability of this cat. Because at some point I've got to make a decision. Okay? If I have a dystocia, ultimately, what is going to be the decision here? Which hole is it going to come out? Okay? Is it going to come out the way enough to make a new hole. I mean, that's what it really, really boils down to. Now, what helps us make those decisions? What are we going to be talking to our client about? How are we going to get them to agree to, you need to move forward, and that thing needs to come out the way you were trying to get it out, or we can quickly switch gears and go into, C-section mode. What'd you say? Okay, so how much do they love this cow? Okay, and who's worth what? Who is worth more? If she's some old gray cow that we bought at the stockyard, for $500, and she's got a $10,000 embryo in her, what are we gonna do real quickly? They probably honestly may have already shot her in the head and cut the calf out. I'll just be quite honest with you. It happens, and I don't like that. I'm just telling you the reality. I quit doing work for people because they did that. They would go buy these poor little skinny heifers, fatten them up, and then they would put these really high dollar embryos in them, and the calves were way too big, and they never came out. And they would just knock them in the head and cut the calves out, and they would bottle feed them. And I quit doing work for them because I just thought it was too unethical. I can't deal with that. I just can't deal with that. But in the business world, the calf does have a potential value, and that dam does have a real known value, right? So we have to determine who's worth more. What I like to do is that as soon as I'm starting to palpate this girl and figure out what I've got, I start saying, oh, how long y'all had her, and, how much you love her, and you start trying to, how she bred, and, whatever. Commercial cow person, it really does boil down to how much they love her and what the market looks like and how much free capital they got. But, most people are going to have a really quickly tell you who is worth more, that cow or that calf. If the cow is worth what direction are we going to probably move in? Fetotomy. Fetotomy. So we're going to take that calf out piece by piece through the vagina. However we can get it out, we're going to get it out. Because we don't want to open that cow's side and run the risk of peritonitis, a decreasing uterus, septicemia. She's dead in 3 days. If I can get that calf out, if this calf is worth a whole lot more, like I already told you, they're going to take that calf out any which way they can. I've only done that one time. I did do that actually when I was working for Wally. There was a guy that's right down the road, older gentleman down the road. He had a cow and she was down, and she'd been down for a day. And now he thought she was in labor, so I went over there. She actually already had hind limb paralysis, and she was, me and her were in a race to see who could have been born in the 70s. She was pretty old. I didn't feel like she was going to get up, and so I actually did, anesthetize her really, really heavily and take the calf out and immediately euthanized her. As soon as I was done, I just knew she wasn't going to get up. But we didn't just have full intentions of kind of knocking her in the head and taking the calf. So you kind of feel these people out as you're going along and kind of discern which direction that you're moving in. Let me pause for 1 second. Anytime you meet these clients, if they are production people, what is the most important thing you need to determine or understand about them and their farm? We need to understand what is their goal, right? What is the intent? What kind of production are you in, right? So, because if they're a seed stock producer, those cows are going to have a lot more value, okay? And if it's a bull calf in there, it might have a really high value. And they might be in that cheap cow, embryo calf world. If they're average commercial, producers, we know whatever the market was today, that's what things are worth. And those things really do kind of set you up for how you want to have that conversation. You already have a general impression of how this thing is going to go. And here's what I always tell my clients. When it gets to the point in time where you talk about euthanizing something or making a big decision like C-section versus, fetotomy, number one, I make sure my clients understand what my job is for them. And my job is to give you enough information that you make an informed, educated decision about you and your pet or your, whatever. This cow, this calf, whatever it is you're working on. My job is not to judge, okay? I'm not judge and jury. I'm not the animal police, okay? I'm not going to, take your bull away from you if he fails his BSC and all that stuff. I just need to make sure you have enough information to make a decision. I also don't give them treatment options that I'm really not willing to carry out. Like just killing this heifer and, cutting the calf out of its side. That's not an option for me. I'll do a C-section and try to save her, but I'm not going to just euthanize her and take the calf. So, just like the guy I told you about, I think it was our juniors, the dairyman, that wanted me to euthanize a 5-gallon bucket of kittens. But I offered to spay the cats for free, and he didn't want that. So then he'd come in, every 2 or 3 weeks with a 5-gallon bucket of kittens, wanting me to euthanize them. I'm not doing that. I offered to spay the cats for free. We always had a preceptor, and it was great for them to kick some barn cats and spay them. And they won't die either. They're really tough. So anyway, don't even offer treatment options that you aren't really willing to carry out. Okay. Now, all that being said, we got Dr. Google these days. A lot of people have a kind of a better idea on the front side about things than they used to. And be careful about the words that you use. You can't really overtalk people anymore. As soon as you walk out of the exam room or go around the corner, they got their phone out. They're Googling every buzzword they can remember. Okay? And by the time they come back in, they're thinking to themselves, why did they even come here? I have the internet. And you're thinking, why did they come here? They have the internet. What is it they actually want from me? And you have to keep smiling and have a good body language. For a couple of hours, okay? Those heifers get really dramatic about it, but until they actively start pushing, we don't worry about stage 2, and that's what's should be a much more well-defined period of time, okay? We talked about that Ferguson's reflex and that oxytocin release mechanism. Stage 3, we're going to have expulsion of the what? Lochia. Lochia, word of the day, Lochia. No, not really. That you will see that in the final, say, 30, 40 days of the gestation, okay? That's when you know that all those sacrosciatic and pelvic ligaments are relaxing. So, yes, by the time she's in stage 1, she is definitely a spring heifer, but you may have noticed that a month in advance. Okay? So if we, for instance, we AI'd all our heifers on January 1, and we think that they're all going to have, September 15th calves, then somewhere around August, we're going to have some spring heifers. That makes sense? And we're going to notice, grass, good year, a lot of grass, and they're fat, and they're springing, and every time they come running up to the barn to get some cottonseed, they're just pooping and spraying and springing everywhere. They're just fat and happy, okay? Springing heifers. So there's our expulsion of fluids, our fetal membranes. How long does it take before you want to consider those membranes retained? Because I'm sure somebody told you about retained fetal membranes, right? Retained fetal membranes. It's terrible, right? It's terrible. So how long is normal? When should she expulse those membranes? Hour, a day, 30 minutes, a couple of days. 3 hours exactly. On the dot. know, if it comes out within the first week, we're okay with it. Okay? Cows are tough. Cows and cats are just tough. If it was a horse, if it's not out in an hour, she's gonna be trying to die. Her feet will be falling off, she'll be fatter, and she'll be howling, and somehow her uterus will tore or something, it'll be terrible, okay? We don't get too excited, okay? Now, if everything goes normal, typically about the time, give them an hour and that calf is up and starts suckling, most of the time they will spit one out. Why is suckling a part of spitting that out? Oxytocin. So she's getting an endogenous release of oxytocin every time that calf suckles, right? So, we don't get too excited. We get more excited about a dairy cow retaining the placenta just because they're just a fragile animal, okay? But you got pasture sound, hardy beef cows, she may tote that thing around for 2 or 3 days and it not be a really big deal. I do get concerned if her calf did not make it. And why is that? No oxytocin, right? A buddy of mine called me last night and asked him what he's doing. He said, I'm treating this cow that's got retained membranes or whatever. And he actually, he knew the cow and the place, and so he was just letting the people come pick up some medications because he didn't even want to have to go over there and deal with her because she's a little bit rank. And I told him, you need to tell them that they have to milk her 6 or 8 times a day for that placenta to come out. Just kidding, but those mean cows, how they're terrible. So we can wait several days for retained fetal membranes, or before we consider them. Technically, after 24 hours, they're retained, but it is not an emergency like it is in other species. Okay, we want those membranes. We want to see fetus and membranes, especially if you are looking at a polytocious animal. You want to see. Most of the time, they will come with those membranes. Okay, so you don't like to see pigs and pig and pig and no membranes. You don't like that. That means those, they still have attachments and piglets are passing through each other's placentas. Does that make sense? They're shooting down the pipe and those placentas are still attached to the uterine wall because they're going to stay and then there's going to be problems for those species. Okay? Let's take a break for just a quick minute and then we'll How long does it take to get anatomic involution of the bovine uterus? 4 weeks, 28 days, 4 weeks, a month. And what about histologic involution? 6 weeks, 42 days, 45 days, a month and a half, whatever you want to call it. All right, and that's important because when we then know we cannot expose this cow to a bull for at least 45 days, right? So our goal for normal recovery from parturition is to have normal endometrium and have ovulated once by 45 days. She's done that. We're going to put her back on the breeding wheel or back in the pasture with the bull by 60 days or so. Okay? So there's our stages of parturition. It's even on there. So Miss Brownie, so what do you think the greatest causes of bovine dystocia are?
Fetal giant.
Fetal giant.
It's the pelvis, the fetus size, right? Pelvis.
Fetal maternal disproportion, like that, is a good term. All those things really come back to mismatch. Too skinny, too fat, mismatch, breedings, those all come back to mismanagement. Management is going to be the number one cause. There are plenty of accidents out there, legs do get hung up, those things happen. But majority of them, really end up dealing with some underlying management issue. And if you see a young animal like her having this issue, you better get ready. Because it's probably the tip of the iceberg, right? She's probably not the only heifer over there that looks like that. And they all probably got bred by the same bull, which could be their father or their brother or something along those family saplings. So fetal pelvic disproportion was a term that I'll use there. Somebody said nutrition could be insufficient, age of breeding. Remember we talked about some of these heifers that will go through puberty really early. They're actually in heat when the bull is back in the pasture trying to breed their dam. And so some of these girls may unintentionally get bred as early as 6 months of age. They're trying to have a calf at 15 months of age. That don't end well, I promise you. Does not end well. So fetal malposition. What do you know about fetal malpositioning? Head's looking all in the wrong directions, legs going all in the wrong directions. So what are the terms that we use to describe how this calf is positioned within the dam? So presentation, position, and posture. Okay? Presentation, position, and then posture. All right? So presentation is what is essentially coming first? Head or tail? More likely to be considered normal. Why? Possibly, we can see that. But I mean, think about it. How many things are there if it was coming backwards? Really 2 limbs to deal with. I mean, you have to throw in the head in there, now that's 3 things we got to get lined up. I mean, so it does go back more to what we already mentioned about the initiation of parturition through Ferguson's reflex. Okay, and so most species are going to take a nice swan dive over the pelvis and out onto the ground. Some of these cows will do them standing. Some of them like to lay down. Okay, some of them they will push, and they'll lay down, and out pops the fetus, and they stand right back up. I mean, that's all they spend on the ground for. So, presentation, position, and posture. Presentation is we're going to give a designation. It's really talking about the longitudinal presentation. Is it cranial longitudinal, or is it caudal longitudinal? Okay? What would you call it if it was turned sideways? Sideways. Transverse. Transverse would be the terminology. That doesn't happen very often. I have seen it once in a little miniature heifer, miniature pony, excuse me, a little bitty tiny little thing, and I reached in there with nothing but rib cage, so I was like, oh, and it didn't well. But so not very common to have transverse. Actually, if you had transverse, you then would still need to say cranium left or right. Does that make sense? Okay, because the head, I mean, head's got to be pointing one direction, right? It's got to be looking in her left flank or looking in her right flank. So you'd say transverse, cranium left or cranium right, if you're presented with that. All right, so presentation, position. What are we talking about when we say position? So what are we? So most normal is dorsosacral is so cranial longitudinal, dorsosacral is considered normal. What we're talking about is fetal spine to maternal pelvis. Fetal spine to maternal pelvis. So if I am cranial longitudinal, I'm along the same axis as the dam, and the head is coming first, and the dorsum of that spine of the fetus is touching the sacrum of her pelvis. The dorsum of her pelvis. Y'all follow that? Cranial longitudinal, dorsosacral. That would be normal. Alright? So what if I said cranial longitudinal, dorsopubic? It'd be upside down. That doesn't happen very often either, but you guys are catching on quickly. That's good. Yes, ma'am.
Can you repeat what cranial longitudinal is?
Yeah, so when we talk about presentation, we are talking about the alignment of that fetus with the maternal axis. Okay, so are we in there lengthwise like we should be to come out, head and legs first? And we designate, is the head coming first or is the rump coming first? So it is either cranial longitudinal, head is coming lengthwise, or backwards, caudal longitudinal would be coming first. If we were sideways, it would be a transverse presentation. Does that make sense? So that's presentation. Basically, which direction is the head looking, or which way was coming out of the vagina. Presentation position is the fetal spine, its relationship to the maternal pelvis. Okay, so normal would be cranial longitudinal, head coming first on a lengthwise axis, dorso, fetal spine, dorso sacrum, the dorsum of her pelvis. So we want his backbone coming up under her sacrum. Does that make sense? All right, so everybody's with me. Cranial longitudinal, dorsosacral. Posture. What is posture? Posture is going to be the positioning, positioning of the limbs, right? So how do we describe the placement of those limbs? Okay, you got a question? Yeah, she might have been showing me the motion for posture. So if it was normal, this is what we would say. Cranial longitudinal, dorsosacral, head and forelimbs extended. Head, neck, technically, and both forelimbs extended. That would be swan dive over the pelvis, just like it's meant to be. Okay? If I said cranial longitudinal, dorsosacral, head and neck, and left forelimb extended, right forelimb has carpal flexion and retention. So yeah, add that carpus. So the left forelimb and the head and neck have been coming out, and we had our carpus flexed, and it caused retention rest of that distal limb. All right, let's go caudal longitudinal, dorsosacral, coxofemoral flexion and retention. Caudal longitudinal, dorsosacral, coxofemoral flexion and retention. But first, that is real breach. That's real breach. So we're just gonna, you reach in there and palpate, and what you're gonna end up, or as she's running off the trailer, you notice that she has two tails. That's what you really see. You know, and so because there's just an anus, you know, there's multiple ani looking at you right there, and so you reach in there and it's just rump, it's just calf rump, and you got all the pelvis. What we know is flexed is the pelvis. We actually can't describe the limbs beyond that because they could be crisscrossed applesauce or who knows what. But we know the pelvis is flexed and those entire rear limbs are retained. Follow me on that? And so we can, you know, it can get quite complicated and you can keep going. What if I said caudal longitudinal, dorsosacral, rear limbs extended? Normal, backwards presentation, right? Going to be normal up to 30% of the time. So you guys follow that logic there, okay? There are occasional times where, what if I said cranial longitudinal, dorso-ilial, head and forelimbs extended. In an oblique position, so there's a little bit of torsion of that calf. So I'm looking at it, and I really would say ilial, dorso-ilial, right or left, her right or left ilium, wing, okay, is what I'm talking about. That's the relationship of spine to pelvis, and we would call that a torsion, okay? That is a gentle torsion. If you try to pull that calf, it doesn't like to do that. It doesn't bend sideways. Remember that when we're pulling this calf, we want it to come up, and we want the weight of that calf to then, if she was standing, to really go straight to the ground. And what happens there is, what's going to be the widest portion of that calf on the front end? Shoulders. So if we get those shoulders out, we feel pretty good. We can get this calf out. Next, we're going to that width of those wings of those iliums is going to be the next hardest thing to get out. So follow me here. If this calf is diving over, imagine that what happens is his rear end gets picked up as high as it can into the highest portion of her pelvis, the widest portion of her pelvis. It is a little bit wider up top than it is down at the bottom. Okay? So that normal, them standing up, oftentimes it aids the normal parturition. So as it gets tumped over, if you're using a calf jack on a standing cow, once we get the shoulders out and the thorax out and we engage the hips in her pelvis, we're going to stop using our calf jack, and I'm simply going to start pushing that calf jack down. And I'm just going to use hand pressure, and by me pushing him down, you're going to jack him up, and the widest part of his pelvis coming through the widest part of her pelvis. Does that make sense? All right. So that would be a little bit of a towards calf there. All right. So fetal. Now you got to understand presentation, position, and posture. Right? Y'all can all describe it. If I gave you a picture of a calf coming through a pelvis, you could describe that for me. We'll talk about it again one day. So caudal longitudinal, as much as Tim says 25% of the time, maybe even 30% of the time. What is a true breach? You guys have got that now. Caudal longitudinal, dorsosacral, caudal longitudinal, and coxofemoral flexion and retention. Two-tailed cow. There are plenty of congenital problems that can lead to dystocia. How do you guys know much about hydrops salentois and hydrops amnion? Not very much. hard to remember? All right.
Zero.
Have you been told?
I'm gonna go no.
You're aware of these conditions?
I may have seen the word before.
Not necessarily. So red bag in a mare is when there will actually be complete separation and the fetus comes out intact inside the uterus. So it is separated, yet it's still trapped within the amnion and it's going to suffocate. So many times they expose them and they're completely contained in a red bag because we're seeing that allantoic surface there. Looks like that crushed velvet bag. Looks like Santa Claus' Christmas bag, and there's a little dead foal inside of it. Okay, because it's been separated and there's no oxygen for them to breathe. They're still under amnion. All right, so we have an amniotic vesicle. We have an allantoic cavity. What kind of fluids are in which? So which is the inner, which is the outer? 50-50 shot. Come on, it's Wednesday afternoon. The amniotic is the inner. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I said.
So we have an amniotic vesicle inside of an allantoic cavity. It's a bag within a bag. All right? Now, when we're feeling that membrane slip in a cow, remember the word I say membrane slip for short, but really Dr. Kozel had it properly in her notes. It said chorioallantoic membrane. So remember that we have this tiny little vesicle that's going to be wrapped in an allantoic cavity, but it's the allantois that's going to be the fetal-maternal interface. Okay? Our placental connection, that implantation, is happening through the chorioallantois, that most outer membrane. So when we're feeling a membrane slip, what you are feeling is that membrane that's running through the lumen of that uterus prior to its attachment. Remember, we're still dealing with very early implantation in the ipsilateral horn that it was first where that embryo dropped down into. Remember, ipsilateral to that ovulatory ovary. So outer surface, outer layer, chorioallantois. It's going to be an allantoic cavity. Inside of there is an amnion or an amniotic vesicle. And there's going to be two major fluid types, one in each of those cavities, one inside of our amniotic vesicle, completely different nature in our allantoic cavity. What is inside the amnion? What fluid makeup is this? What is maybe more like the histologic makeup of the fluid that is contained within the amniotic vesicle that is called amniotic fluid? I got some urine, I got some protein. There is a lot of protein in urine, actually. So which cavity is the fetus in? In the amnion. So do you want to live in urine? No, we don't want to live in urine. Otherwise I have a nice yellow soup right now. No, we don't want to live in urine. So it's got to be something that's pretty, tissue friendly, right? And it's really a mucoid-like substance that essentially is snot and spit. I mean, it's saliva and mucus, okay? Remember that the lungs are going to have contained this ingredient. All of any of our sinuses, if we have external ear canals, they're going to be full of this stuff. It can't be something caustic, right? It's going to be something kind of gentle. And it would be kind of cool if it had a secondary purpose, right? We love to kill two birds with one stone. What would be nice if this fluid was real mucoid and slippery? Could aid in parturition and be its own lubricant. Very much so. So yes. So snot and spit. Okay? It is saliva, it is mucus. It's not extremely cellular, like, you know, when you got snotty nose from an upper respiratory tract infection, but more like vaginal mucus that is very clear and very viscous, okay, very, very, very viscous. So, amniotic cavity, that amniotic vesicle is going to contain snot and spit, something that is kind of slippery, and also that buoyancy provides kind of a level of protection for that fetus, right? It takes a pretty good punch to, it kind of absorbs a blow and a bounce, as opposed to just straight water. But in that outer cavity, that allantoic cavity, then what do we have? Mainly urine, fetal waste, okay? We're not taking in an oral meal, so we're not making a lot of feces, but we are still running fluid, blood through the system. That blood has to be filtered, right? And so the waste then still gets excreted. We have to have some place to put that. We don't have a connection to the damn ureters or her kidneys, but she creates, or this fetus creates its own bathroom, okay? And it collects all that. Anything that is processed by the liver is actually digested too, and there is some meconium, that first feces. So all of these neonates, mammals, when they're born, you know, they have been producing urine for quite some time, and they're going to have a bowel movement pretty shortly after they eat their first meal. Or if I got really stressed during the birthing process. Do you guys get a little nervous and get stressed out and feel like you have to go potty sometimes? You know, like test day, like Friday morning, y'all be walking over there to take your test, like, should we go to the bathroom or not? You know? Yeah, you get stressed out, your flight or flight kicks in, and you start shutting down things, and your tummy feels all funny. So if we pull a calf, and it is covered in feces, good, bad, scary, concerned, Mom will clean it up. I'm not worried about the mess. Appreciate your concern. We got running water. We'll be all right. But you do have to be a little bit more concerned, okay? It is an indication of fetal stress. That thing kind of got wound up in there, and he had that fight or flight response. It was test day, and he's scared he's going to fail, and kind of pooped his pants, okay? That's what it boils down to. It could be simply due to actual abdominal pressing as well. If there was a sustained or prolonged stage 2, I mean, it could really just have squeezed the poop out of them, or you could have done it when you were trying to pull a big calf out of a small vagina. We could have, you know, pressure's got to go somewhere. It's just like that bursting penis on that penile hematoma for that bull. All right, so if I told you that this animal has hydrops allantois, what is going on with this gestation? Hydrops allantois. What does this animal look like? Tell me what am I going to see? What am I going to feel? Swelling, so she's going to look big. She's going to look like she's carrying a bunch of fluid. She's going to look like, you know how frog looks like on a lily pad? Okay, you see this frog and this big lily pad out from under. When they lay down and they go down, they look like a cow laying on a lily pad. And it's really her abdomen, and it's just all the fluid. She actually will just get so exhausted, she'll lay down and she'll never get up. So what is happening? Where is that fluid? In a hydrops allantois, what do I have too much of? Too much allantois, too much urine, too much fetal urine. How do I get too much fetal urine? Is that a baby problem or is that a baby mama problem? No one blame it on mama? It could be either. Could be either. We need to make that diagnosis. How could this be a fetal problem? So, you think that's some fetal renal anomaly? Got fetal mega kidney. If the allantois is our potty, say I got plumbing problems. And I just get one of the real small ones because it's just me. Alright? But then, everybody on this road right here shows up at my house. What's going to happen to this little porta john? It's going to be more than the stream could bear, right? I mean, we're going to fill it up and it's going to overflow. Now, why did that happen? We got too many people peeing in my pot. That's it, right? It's very simple. It's more than she could carry. How does that happen in utero? Twins. I got more baby than I was supposed to have in here. So just by having twins, I can end up with a fetally induced hydroallantosis. Too much DP for my body. Can't take it. Okay, it's going to spill over somewhere. How can that be part of mama's problem? There's one other big scenario when hydroallantosis occurs. Every bit of that fluid is not just straight every single drop. There is some taken away. There's some fluid balancing there. And that has to have a proper placental interface. So if we have a placental insufficiency type issue, the dam may not be taking away as much fluid as possible. Okay? And so we have an overaccumulation of allantosis. And really, you don't have her problem or the fetus. Do we not develop, a normal placenta, or does she not have a normal endometrium? Okay? Yes. It would probably be more likely just to simply cause, her a systemic problem, like she might end up with heart failure or ascites or fluid accumulation, but it may lead to premature death, of that fetus, but I doubt that it would actually affect the allantosis. Now, I was wrong one time, it's been a while, so check me, I could be wrong on that. But just logically thinking through that, I would think not. I think that we would have blood pressure issues, we would not, meet the fetus's normal demand, so you would have a premature or a dismature fetus, or one that, expired prior to parturition. And she would end up with fetal stress and go into labor, prematurely. Lots of train wrecks could happen with that scenario. So, hydroallantosis, either got too many people peeing in the pot, or I got a problem, with the exit mechanism for my sewage system here, right? Now, what if I said we've got a hydrops amnion situation? Hydrops amnion, what does that mean? I got excess amniotic fluid, okay? So what kind of fluid are we talking about? Snot and spit, okay? You can say mucus, but you won't remember. Say snot and spit and you'll never forget. Say too many calves peeing in the pot, you won't forget it, I promise you. If I got too much snot and spit, what's the problem here? Who is making all this snot and spit? The fetus is, right? What happens, what's the regulatory mechanism for all this snot and spit? We've got to have a balance. We can't just make it and not do something with it. What's happening to that snot and spit? How is it regulated? It's being absorbed, it's being swallowed. Remember, he's going to be swallowing this stuff. And that's where that little bit of digestion comes from. That's part of the makeup of that meconium. So how could we get an imbalance or an overabundance of amnion? Not eating it enough, and how would that happen? Stubborn little cat, picky eater? No, craniofacial deformities, okay? So congenital anomalies in which these guys actually don't swallow properly. So they may have septal defects, they could have two heads, or, some bizarre craniofacial deformity of which they don't regulate that own level of amnion by swallowing and digesting some of that stuff. So, what do you think is more likely?
I don't know, maybe that was another question.
Which one do you think is more likely? probably see a few more high drops out in toilets. Not that outlandish to say that we could get 2 calves and it was more than the dam could handle, right? What was your question? You sure? Because I'm not gonna stay up here just today after class, I'm gonna go home.
Restrictions, or if you have existing daily large, that would also cause an issue?
Hey, that's great, yeah, I would have to say yes, that's a logical possibility. That is one of those things that, it may have seen me, I've never seen it, okay, but I'm sure that I have crossed paths with the assistant landlord reports, I might add one, it might be what's wrong with me. But yes, any of those things, anything that you could imagine that could impact the esophagus, or any part of the digestive tract, or again, a large, very detrimental craniofacial defect. Okay, so now y'all cool on high drops? Alright. High drops is not cool, but y'all cool with it? Okay. So here's Brownie's presentation, position, and posture. Okay, hollow longitudinal. What does that really mean? Backwards. Okay, rump coming at us. All right, dorso-iliac. So some type of oblique. He really needs to give us a better indication of, is it talking about her left ilium or her right ilium? But so it's backwards, kind of turned over on its side a little bit, and both hind limbs were extended. Okay, so backwards, hind limbs were both got out, but it was a little bit rocked over like so. Okay? What would you want to do if you were going to try to be the one to pull this calf? Yeah, we try to correct that by detoursing it a little bit, right? We want to detours that thing and then try to pull it out. Well, they tried that and it didn't work. Why? Because there's fetal-pelvic disproportion there. She, in this situation, they're claiming that she was bred too early. I don't know, remember all the history. It may have been the fact that she was bred too early because she didn't weigh enough because she was under condition. By age, she was fine. By body condition, remember we talked about just because you can get pregnant doesn't mean you should get pregnant, right? And just because you have a baby don't make you a mama or a daddy, just like me on the piano don't make me a pianist, okay? It makes you have a baby, but it don't make you a parent. So she was too small in stature. She should have weighed a whole lot more. This poor body condition, okay? Somebody mentioned over-conditioning earlier when we talked about that. Why is over-conditioning a problem and just as big of an issue as under-conditioning? Yeah, there's no room, there's no slack. Even though all those ligaments and everything relaxes, if it's just full of fat, the hole is too small. The vagina cannot relax enough because there's so much fat laid down around it. I actually pulled a calf one time, poor man, had a conversation, it was gonna be a really tight squeeze, and I said, hey, this is not looking really well. I mean, we're gonna have to have a really hard pull here. When we had our normal conversation, he said, nope, it needs to come out that hole right there. And so we pulled the calf, we were as gentle as we could be, and right about the time, you always get this one moment where everything kind of breaks loose and the calf comes rocket fire out on you. And if they're standing, you almost never have time enough to recover, and then the calf hits head first on the concrete. And people are like, oh, well, and you're like, and you just gotta play it off, like, oh, you're good, buddy, you can never get up there because you don't know when that point in time is that she's gonna break loose. But that moment that it broke loose, and out comes the calf, the heifer kind of laid down. They often will do that. They get maximum pressure in that pelvic canal, and they just want to lay down. Okay, a lot of pressure on the pelvic nerve, especially what set of nerves? The obturator nerve, that's what we call calving paralysis. So they get an enormous amount of pressure, and they'll just kind of back legs are a little limp and they'll lay down. Calf shot out, and as soon as she hit the ground, I kid you not, it was like 2 pounds of fat just fell out of her vagina. And I go up to her, and she had a vaginal tear, and fat just shot out. I mean, all that fat that was, narrowing her vagina, it ruptured, and it all came out. It was like, a can of snakes. I mean, his fat just came ripping out everywhere. This sister, she did fine. But yeah, it very much does impede the exit of that calf, okay? All right, so when do we get involved? We kind of talked about some general time frames there, and whether or not we're talking about a heifer or we're talking about a full cow, adult cow. But, this thing right here, he took this out of a book. It says, look for bleeding around the cow's rectum. Man, the only time I saw a cow's rectum bleed was when a coyote had eaten part of it out. She's been down for 3 days. I don't see a lot of rectal bleeding on cows. We can see that, if you see a calf sticking out and it doesn't progress, you need to get involved. If you see a bag going in, coming out, we don't have progress, we need to get involved, okay? 2 hours for a happy, healthy adult cow is plenty of time to watch. If we do see frank blood coming from anywhere, yeah, that's not great. Obviously, if our dam starts looking puny, okay? And many a times, all we really know is that we saw her in labor at this point in time. We don't really know actually when it started, right? You say, well, I noticed her at whatever time. He said he noticed her at 10 o'clock. She could have been in labor since 10 o'clock the night before, okay? I had a guy, this would have been fall of 17. He called on a Sunday night, right at dark, and said he had a dystocia. And I go out there, and this is the same scenario. Poor little old, said she was 2-year-old heifer. I mouthed her, sure enough, she had her 2 adult teeth all the way in, 2-year-old teeth. And this poor heifer was exhausted. She'd been pushing. And, man, how long has she been in labor? And he said, quote, I've seen her been pushing for about 2 hours now. I've seen her pushing for 2 hours. When was the last time I saw her prior to her pushing 2 hours ago? Well, and it just happened to be the Sunday after the Iron Bowl, and there was a little football game the day before, and one team won, and the other team loses like they always did. The underdog kind of won, so some people spent some extracurricular activities Saturday night. And he didn't wake up till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, because he had too much to drink on Saturday. And poor little cow hadn't been in labor for who knows how long. Okay, so when did you notice it? When did it really, really start? If we see that meconium on those calves as we're trying to deliver them, we know it's been going on a while. If everything is dry and there's no more lubrication, that amnion is completely exhausted, and it feels like you have to apply an enormity of lube there, it's been there a while. And this poor little heifer, everything was dry, and she was miserable. We got the calf out. Mary Stewart did a pecotomy and got the thing out. So once I realized she'd probably been in labor for a day, I quit, and I told him to bring her in school, and we did a pecotomy the next morning. I wasn't going to ruin my Sunday evening in the dark with no lights and no pictures and no picture pen. So he brought her on in, we fixed her the next day. All right, so once we notice, that we have a stressful situation, we want to try to assess if that calf is alive or not. Don't make any promises to anybody. Who is more important, fetus or the dam? Okay, that becomes the big question. In this case, the calf was dead, and the owner, we thought the calf was dead, but they still didn't think they could get this fetus out, and the owner did, however, elect to do a C-section. Okay, if they don't want to do a C-section, then we've got to do a fetotomy. If you're going to do a fetotomy, what is the number one thing you want to be aware of? Is the calf alive or dead? So I promise you, you do not want to pull out a piece of calf and and then you pull out the main piece of the calf, and it's trying to stand up, and it's only got 2 legs or one limb left or something like that, okay? That's a bad situation. To think you got a dead calf, and 5 minutes later, you hear it over there coughing, and it's sat up, and it's only got 2 legs left. I mean, those are terrible, terrible situations. What should you do? How do we know that calf is dead? So, I mean, we think so, but how can you be sure?
Ultrasound if you don't have people.
Just take them.
All those things are possibilities, but that's not what you do. Make sure the calf is expired. Either go in and disconnect the umbilicus. Fairly normal contributors to society, they will want to watch, and they will also want their children to watch, because it's a part of the circle of life, an average day on the farm. Okay? And so you just tell them, and you just try to be respectful. If you pull the limb off, you don't throw it, out of the way, especially if a head, they don't want to see the head rolling, don't roll, because I've seen that, and it's just unprofessional, okay? It really is just unprofessional. This calf is deceased, never even got a chance at life. We're now working for the dam, but we want to be respectful of everything and everyone involved. So you do it discreetly. And if you have good techs, you let them help you do that. You hand it to them, and if it's your hospital, you have a bucket around the corner that you collect things in. They don't want to see all the parts laying around and all that kind of stuff. So make sure it is dead, and make sure everybody around you understands what's about to happen, and they really want to stay and watch. Okay. Otherwise, if they don't like do a petotomy, then we're going to have to take this thing out of the side. Do you guys want to do a C-section knowing the calf is dead? Why? Increases the danger to the dam, okay, for sure. Especially if we've been mucking around in there for an hour trying to get this calf out and tell them what we took in there. It's really hard not to spill some of those uterine contents into the abdomen. Okay, there's just no way to do a completely sterile C-section. You can do them in small animals. The only sterile C-section, I saw one guy do it. He's just kind of a really awesome surgeon. He unzipped this dog real quick. He went in there, he grabbed a horn, put a hemostat across one pedicle, the other pedicle across the cervix. He sliced all 3 of them and threw the whole uterus onto the other table. And he went back in there and started to tie everything up over there. Spader, and then did the C-section, really. Spader, and then they did the C-section over on the other table. That's the only way. You just can't do that on a bovine. You're going to get some contents in the abdomen. And you're going to have to do a whole lot more work, a whole lot more risk to the dam, and there's no reward of a live calf. Okay, so we really put that dam's life at risk, and she already has a deceased calf. So that's not a very... You aren't very motivated when you have to do that C-section on a dead calf, okay? So when we can come back and talk about petotomies and more obstetrical stuff, but this heifer got a C-section, okay? And let's just walk through this C-section. This will be the last thing we do. What I want us to do is we're gonna cut our way in, and we're gonna sew our way out. What we actually do when we do C-sections on cows, okay? She's going to tell you that's not right, okay? But, yeah, it works, okay? So, if we're going to do a C-section, first thing we need to talk about is our approach, okay? What's your approach for a bovine C-section? So I'm hearing some left paralumbar fossa fans over here. Few head nods. Anybody disagree? Paramedian, so it would be kind of a low flank incision. Some people like that. That's preferred if they're already down. So if they're already down, you kind of lower your incision. If they're standing, you're trying to use the body cavity as the retention device, right? what's right on the other side of that abdominal wall? The rumen, okay? So typically we do exploratories from the right side because the rumen's blocking everything. Why would y'all choose to just voluntarily run right into the rumen?
That's what I saw doing.
That's just what I saw done. That's just how we do it here, Doc. How we do it here. So actually, that rumen that is your enemy on a exploratory becomes your friend on a C-section because it's blocking all that intestinal content. So it's the uterus. You see your rumen there, and you got to reach in. You have to pull that uterus and that calf up to your incision. But now that you've got this calf over on this left side, you got the rumen behind you to keep all that intestinal contents blocked off. Okay? All right. So here's the quick and dirty. Some people like to do them standing. Some people like to do them laying down. I like to do them standing. Okay? I don't like to lay them down. I prefer to do them standing. Dr. Carson, my mentor, would much rather put one down on the ground. They actually did do Brownie on the ground. It depends on the attitude of the beast. A lot of standing C-sections turn into down C-sections, okay? First C-section I ever did started as a standing and ended with her down. And anyway, long story there. But so you intend to do a standing one. All right, let's real quickly. If you were going to do this thing standing, left flank would be the preferred mechanism or approach. What are we going to use for anesthesia or analgesia? So local or some regional anesthesia, right? Local or regional anesthesia. So there is, tell me about those regional or local opportunities. Somebody say in the L or the 7 or whatever, right? So we can have just a very lengthy line block, right? Or we can have a line block and we can take a horizontal line towards the head, which will sweep, okay? Remember, all those nerves are going to be sweeping from cranial to caudal. So if we go straight up and down, we'll get most of them, but we could actually have some overarching nerves over the top. So we'll fan it back towards the head, okay? And we'll get us an inverted L. That's probably the most commonly used local. Or you can do regional anesthesia and perform paralumbar blocks. That is, there's two different paralumbar blocks. One is, yes, you actually are going above and below those transverse process, okay? And then there's certain numbers, and I always forget, but it's like 1, 2, 4, or 2, 3, 5, or something like that. Really, you only get to do those on dairy cows. Because on beef cows, there's a little thing there called a ribeye, hopefully, that's in the way, okay? And you can't feel those transverse processes. So we typically do a lot more local on beef cattle because there's a lot more beef and tissue there. Dairy cow's body wall is so thin that sometimes it's hard to know that you're staying in the muscle and you haven't gone all the way into the abdomen. Okay, there's just not much muscle. That's where a beef cow, it may be 2 or 3 inches of muscle there. So we can do regional or local anesthesia. All right, now let's cut our way in. So if I start making an incision, what am I going to cut through first? Skin. What's next? Subcutaneous tissue, and not much on Brownie, right? In 3. And then what's next? External abdominal oblique, then what's next? Internal abdominal oblique, then what's next? Okay, rectus abdominis, right? Then what's next? Peritoneum. You guys have done cats and dogs and opened a lineal incision, and you know there's a peritoneum there sometimes or somewhere, but you kind of cut all the way through it. is a very well-defined layer of tissue in an animal of this size. And this is what has to happen. You make your skin incision, and with every layer that we just talked about, you are trying to make a full thickness incision. I don't want to take 6 passes to get through the skin, because then it looks like a dog ate your homework. Okay, it's all chewed up. We want full thickness to the skin, unzipper. Okay, we want to get all the way through the back, then we want to push all the way through that external abdominal. Really on your muscles, you don't want to feather your scalpel down through there because it starts shredding. You can actually use your hands and you can separate those layers of muscles. Some surgeon's preference. I used to try to tear them because there's less bleeding, but then you have all these different multiple planes. Some of them are torn this way, some of them are separated that way. Remember, those abdominal muscles are all running in different planes. So, you know, you kind of have this trap door that's got, you know, 3 different layers of muscle closing from different directions. I like to make nice clean incisions, and I'm going to sew everything back up along one line. But you got to go external, you got to go internal, and you got to get that rectus or that transverse, and then you're going to see that peritoneum. And I'll give you a really, really nice piece of advice. A lot of times our local blocks have worked really, really well to deaden that skin, subcuing those muscles, and you get a little bit relaxed, and you go to make an incision through that peritoneum, and she kicks you right in the stifle. Okay, she kicks you right in the kneecap. Yeah. I don't know why, but it just seems like it's hard to anesthetize that layer on these bigger animals. So when you're making these incisions, I'm going to have, you know, my finger pointer tight grip, okay, where I'm controlling the pressure on the tip of that blade, and I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to stand as far away as I can and make my incisions. Okay, so that if she kicks, everybody know what a cow kick is? All right, they don't kick straight back. She brings that leg all the way up forward, and then she swings it out. So she'll bring it up on you up this way, and then she'll kick you across both fronts of the thighs, and then you'll lay down. You'll be laying and rolling around in dirty water and stuff. So back up, and you'll end up getting lazy and getting closer and closer and closer. Before you hit that peritoneum, what I typically do is I will make one quick stab incision. There's a major pressure gradient there. You feel all that negative pressure release and air suck in, and they oftentimes do jump. After I made that little stab incision, I'll grab my scissors and I'll grab that peritoneum, and then you can just unzip it. Okay, I like to have a nice control. I don't like to have a blade waving around right there with the rumen or the uterus poking around, so I like to finish kind of unzipping it. If we're doing standing, we're going to take that uterus, and really what you're trying to find is, typically they would be in cranial longitudinal, so you're dealing with the back end of this calf. I reach in and I find the hock that is on my side, and both arms pick it up and rest the point of that hock in the bottom part of your incision. So now that calf is kind of jacked up into your incision like so. What we typically do is find the length of one cannon bone, okay, or from hock to toe, and we're going to make an incision about the length of that distal limb. Try not to cut through any placentomes. Okay, at this point in time, that uterus is actually so thin, you can see that calf in there, and you can see where every placentome is. So you pick you a straight line that's about the length of from hock to toe, or at least the cannon bone, and you're going to make one incision, cutting all the way through that uterus, trying not to cut the calf. Okay? You're going to lose some uterine contents, fluid into the abdomen. We're going to then place chains on that calf's feet, and we're going to have to pull it now up and out of my incision. And that's not easy. Okay? I'm not real tall, and that incision's already shoulder height, you know, for me. So picking something 100 pounds up and out of a hole just big enough makes it a challenge. We had an overhead hoist. What we would do is we would put the chains on sterilely, and then they would, have the hoist out, and they would actually be holding all the weight. So we get that calf out, and we got to sew that uterus up. How are you going to close this uterus? So an inverted type pattern. Okay. Any particular you? So we got a horizontal, we got a Inverting mattress, what other patterns are there? That's not inverting, it's appositional. The two major ones are really gonna be a limber or a Cushing's, right? Limber or Cushing's. Utrecht is actually a hybrid of those two. Okay, one's horizontal, one's vertical. Utrecht is kind of 45. And I like a Utrecht. It's called, sometimes they call it a baseball stitch. Okay, because when you're done, it's got those angled stitch lines on it, just like the stitching on a baseball. And it's pretty easy, and you can vary the knots on that thing as well. So, as you're closing this uterus, how many layers are you going to use? You could use one if you have the opportunity and time to close that mucosa and stuff. Mucosa, clobber stitch is what I call, do them all in that second layer or the outer layer of the Utrecht. You'll sleep better at night if you do that. If she's trying to go down on you and and it's a bad situation, I would pick something like a Utrecht, invert it, take really big bites, so that you're really turning that tissue under, okay? And get out of there, all right? I told y'all the first C-section I ever did ended up cow being down. What is happening to the uterus while you're stitching it up? It's involuted. As soon as you get that cap out, it starts shrinking in size, okay? And so you have to go, because otherwise it will be small enough that you can't reach and see it anymore. And y'all stitch so slow. Everybody does. It's so slow. I've seen students suture so slow that the catgut, I think, broke down and dissolved before they were done sewing the uterus. I stand over there, like my shoulders are hurting so bad from just standing here like this, and good night. Everybody was that way. First C-section I did, that's what happened. I lost it. The suture was up in there. I had to reach around there. I found it. I had like halfway across the incision, and it's just leaving me. It's just going away. And then she went down, and I really couldn't find it. I fished around there and found the end of the suture. I was able to take the needle off of it, and then I just kind of tied a big knot and chunked it in there. I didn't know what else to do. What's funny about that is the cow did absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. And that guy that I did that for, he obviously wasn't all that impressed on day one of me showing up out there. But now I'm like partners with that guy on some cows. And so I haven't brought that back up if he remembers me doing that. He's really confident right now in my ability to come with these cows. So I don't bring that back up. But they're pretty tough. They'll heal. As soon as you do get done, how can you help yourself? What is the number one concern post-dystocia on a bovine? Surgery, no surgery, any level of dystocia. Maybe if she's a dairy cow, that's always possible. LDA is a result of any stressor, and dairy cows like, no, y'all are bad news bears. If we manipulate the reproductive tract and have any stress, no, they're terrible. They're cows, they're tough. Their uterus will fall out. Uterine prolapse, okay? Because, we would have kept marking them off the list. They've been straining for so long, and now there's release of that barrier that they still keep straining on you, okay? And so many times you'll get everything done the way you want it, and you all like it, and you're happy, and sometimes you can tell she's not going to stand there much longer, or just like I told you about the heifer, I pull that calf, and then they just drop, and like the worst sound in the world is watching them hit the ground, and then you hear, and the whole uterus falls out. You're just standing there, surrounded by a uterus, and you just spend all this time getting this calf out, and now her uterus falls out. And they often do it when they hit the ground because of the increased abdominal pressure. Again, pressure's got to release somewhere. So as soon as we can get done with these girls, I like to give them oxytocin to encourage uterine involution. So it starts balling up like a water muscle again, and it's not this big wet towel that wants to fall out the vagina. Okay, so that's doing that flank approach. If you closed your uterus up, now what layers? How are you going to sew your way out of there? So what are you going to oppose? You're going to grab every single layer? Are you going to 5 layers stitch up, 5 layer closure? That'd be like an 18-hour C-section for junior surgery. So we're gonna that transverse abdominis really is pretty thin. I'm gonna probably grab the peritoneum and that transverse and do them together. But I'm gonna make small bites, and I really want to know that I secured that up. But then I'm probably not gonna have any issues grabbing that internal and that external together and kind of whip stitching them. Depending on how much actual fat is there, I'll try to close that sub-Q as well. So for me, it's really a 3-layer. Okay, I'm going to do transverse and peritoneum, lump the internal and external together, and probably try to just pull some fat over the top of that, and then I'm going to close that skin. And you can do it any way you want to. I like to do forward interlocking, okay, is what I like to do. Many a times we'll actually leave the last inch or two open for drainage. Okay, you do a lot of manipulation. There's going to be a lot of serum accumulation, especially disrupting all that fat if she was really fat. So that's standing. Let's talk about doing a recumbent, and then we'll knock off for the day. So if we get her on the ground, how are we going to get her on the ground? Okay, cast her. What does that mean? So we're going to use a series of ropes to assist getting her down on the ground. And you guys remind me, I'll teach you some of these. There's 2 really important ones. There's a double half hitch. I can't remember the name of the other one, but I know how to do them. It's pretty amazing for you. You can take an adult bovine down to the ground by yourself if you can apply pressure at the right points. So if we get her down on the ground, now we got to roll her over on her back. How well do you think she's going to volunteer for that? So do we need any anesthesia this time? A little bit of a touch. So what do you want to, and remember now, we're out in the pasture. So you don't like have your rolling ISO machine with you or anything like that. You don't have anesthesia tech with you. It's just you and Granny. Okay, every time you go work on cows, you got to prepare for you and Granny to get the job done. All right. So how are we going to make this cow be still, lay still? Okay. What kind of drug is xylazine? Alpha-2 agonist, right? So what is right? So it's going to sedate her, right? Now, what other things are going to happen with an alpha-2 agonist?
Dropping the blood pressure.
Why?
I'm just saying stuff.
It's actually, should be the other way, right? Vasoconstriction kind of causes a little bit of hypertension. You actually increase GFR, so they're going to be teaching on you. So word to the wise, if you have a urinary calculi and obstruction, don't give them xylazine. I mean, if I was the expert professional witness, I might have to say that was malpractice. Anyway, so you could use it. So essentially, what are you telling me? That alpha-2 agonist is affecting what type of tissues? Smooth muscle. Any smooth muscles we need to deal with? Uterus. What do you think is going to happen to the uterus if you give her xylazine? It is going to contract. And if you thought it was bad to sew it up, wait till somebody sedated one with xylazine. And actually, that's what happened to me. My boss had sedated her with xylazine. And as soon as we got that calf out, that thing just drew up, and I didn't even have time to sew it up. Not even close to time to sew it up. So I would not recommend xylazine. If you had to absolutely use it, if you didn't have anything else, that would be okay, but you need to really have to work hard with your uterus, okay? What else could you use? You could use some Torb. I mean, that would have helped with some analgesia. It probably doesn't, slow her down all that much. Probably going to consider using ace-promazine. Okay, what kind of drug is ace-promazine?
Not that you, modifier thing, setting.
John? All right, so it's a tranquilizer, right? So we really are gonna slow the brain down a little bit unless we slow those legs down. Now, what are gonna be the side effects of this drug? Jonathan?
Hypertension.
Due to vasodilation, okay, right? So many times these animals, when you sedate them or give them too much ACE, they act like they're gonna pass out, and it's because they did. You cause too much hypertension, and especially if they drop their head too much, and, you know, and they can have a syncopal episode. So, does it sound like a good idea, though, if you need to do a major abdominal surgery to give something a vasodilator? It doesn't. The good news is, though, I'm a good surgeon, and I know where all the big blood vessels are, and I'm not going to incise them, okay? Because if we think about it, let's get inside of this cow's belly. How are we going to, we gave her a little bit of anesthesia, how are we going to provide analgesia? Lidocaine. We're just going to do a simple line block right down the linea, okay? And you better go ahead and block her from her sternum all the way to her teeth, okay? You think you're not going to need it, but it's just going to be like, you know, when y'all do these junior surgeries, y'all start with a little incision about that big, and next thing you know, the dog's completely open for you to find anything. So go ahead and block the whole linea. Now let's incise through it. What are my layers? I'm going to be on the skin, and then what am I going to get? Sub-Q, if any, on a bovine down there, and then I'm going to find the linea, right? And it's going to be unlike any linea that you've ever encountered. It's going to be like sawing through a rope on a ship, okay? It is tough, all right? And remember, we've got an animal that is not designed to be on her back at all. If you have a thin animal, and think about it, we got all this, we got a big rumen, we got a big fluid-filled uterus. Really, really be careful about these animals breathing, okay? We don't want to have everything wedged up against her diaphragm. She may be very relaxed because she might be dead, okay? That happens, okay? So make sure she's not pointed downhill and everything's rolled up on her diaphragm. When we get inside of that, now we would like to try to exteriorize that pregnant horn. This is where we can actually do a little bit cleaner surgery, because we can actually exteriorize it, make an incision outside of the abdominal cavity, let all that fluid run out on the ground, pull that calf, keep the uterus exteriorized, sew it up, put it back in, close the linea, close the skin. Alright? When we go to close the linea on this bovine, what pattern do you want to use? What suture material do you want to use? I didn't ask y'all that suture material earlier. I'll let y'all slide on that. We're going to close the linea. What do you want to use to close our linea? Non-absorbable? Going to use some stainless.
It ain't coming up.
She'll go off at the factory now. When they go to grind her up, they run her to the metal detector. You know why they do that, right? See how much rat shot they got in them. Daggum cowboys shoot them cows all the time with pistols with rat shot in them down there in Okeechobee and stuff. I'm kidding you not, I was at a factory and they said this is the grinding facility. They had this huge contraption hovering over the table. I said, what is that? And they said it's a metal detector. I said, metal detector? I said, yeah, these cowboys shoot these cows so much down here, we gotta have a metal detector. If they goes off, they have to take off a pound or two of meat, tallow off those things. But, so, I keep hearing stuff that's not absorbable. Y'all want to put non-absorbable materials inside a bovine. I mean, you still there? I mean, you pretty proud of that answer. Oh, Gunn over here, he's back from whatever he was doing. He's got another answer. Oh, the skin. You thought I said the skin. So what do y'all want to use? I was pretty impressed because I think that's the right answer. I'm going to use non-absorbable. I told you I could be the devil's advocate. I'm asking you to think, why am I going to put non-absorbable suture inside the abdomen of the bovine? Because I want it to stay. stands up. Oh, Lord. I know. That's why I'm asking you. Okay? Give me a ballpark figure. How big is the room? What's the capacity of a room? 40, 50 gallons. What, there should be 3 functional layers to a room, right? There's fluid level, there's a fiber mat, and then there's gas cap. Man, we got some ground to make up. Let's just pretend like the fiber and the air weigh the same as fluid. Y'all let me have that? So if I got a 50-gallon container and 8 pounds to the gallon of water, I got something that could weigh as much as 400 pounds full. I'm not talking about the rest of the GI tract. I'm not talking about that uterus that she's going to have full again next year because I did such a good job of putting her back together. She's going to breathe right back. Single service conception, okay? So we could have 600, 700, 800 pounds of pressure on this linea. I'm sorry, I don't sleep very good at night when I leave catgut and things like that. I don't have any problem putting catgut anywhere in a boat except for linea. Okay? I am going to probably get me some number 4 super mid. Y'all know what super mid is? So it is a monofilament or is it multifilament? So if we were going to put something through the linea, would you want it to be monofilament or wicking and multifilament? You'd say mono, right? So we wouldn't suck stuff back into the abdomen. Well, Supermid, in fact, is a multifilament. It is numerous multifilament fibers that are then braided together. It's really, really high tensile suture. Why would I be so bold to do that? Really, it has an external, like almost wax-like coating. So the only opportunity for wicking is from the ends. So even though it's going to absorb fluid from the sub-Q, as it traverses through that suture, as long as I don't grab that suture with my materials or my instruments along the length, it is actually as functionally impenetrable as a monofilament type suture. It is truly non-wicking, but it's very, very strong, okay? Anybody ever seen super mid on a wheel? Y'all ever work with some real cow vets? Suture don't come in these little bitty packs. It comes on a wheel, okay? You just pull you off about 3 foot of it, okay? And then you go to work. I do use a lot of gut. I'll give you a warning, okay? Y'all know how long it takes you to boil a spaghetti noodle? Well, it's about, oh man, my goodness, what kind of material do you like? Volcanic ash. Spaghetti noodles. Typically it says 7 to 9 minutes, add 1 or 2 more minutes for desired softness, okay? Even if you get whole wheat like we eat, you can still get it in 10 minutes. But that gut comes off and it looks just like all rigid like spaghetti noodles. In about 7 to 9 minutes, it is done and it's as soft as a cooked one. So you have to move. You can't just play around. It is very much wicking and it will start dissolving before you're very out. The reason it works really good in cattle is because it is reactive. Cattle scar really, really well, and they will heal right up with some catgut. I just can't sleep good at night with 800 pounds relying on catgut. So I use me some number 4 Bronamid, and I'll put it back together. What kind of pattern are you going to use on this linea? Simple interrupted would make sense. Lots of knots. One fails. We got a lot of others to depend on. But it, we're talking about simple interrupted. Bold. I'm so bold. I like it. Be bold enough. Step out there, big one. I like it. I will do a continuous pattern. Y'all know what vest over pants is? You know what vest over pants is? Yes. Yes. Not going to be good, but I'm in there. So let me tell you. What he said? I'm just telling you. Well, he could probably be one of those low income. He'll work for Dr. Coleman. So we're doing vest over pants. What you're doing is, and y'all really should look this up. Look up U-trick, look up a really good mechanism where instead of making complete apposition with those two incised edges, we are actually going to override them. Okay? We're going to override the linea, and it is going to have 2 points of connection. So you put your vest over your pants, and there's going to be an attachment. So we're going to pull one layer up over this side, and they're going to be attached. This edge is going to be attached way over here. Then we're going to have the opportunity to make a second layer and just tie the vest down to the pants. Okay? And it's really not as complicated as it sounds. You need to see that all done out. And it really is a far, near type pattern. Okay? And you can do it continuous, or you can do it interrupted, and then I would just, that flat, I would run it continuous and tack it down. So if your vest over pants were to fail, you do have that simple continuous flat. So you're trying to make a much bigger adhesion. Remember, there's not much blood supply, and there's not much nerve supply at that large linea. And we're talking about a linea that's going to be 2 or 3 inches wide, and about a ½ inch thick, not this little paper thin thing that you guys are used to on spaying these cats. So vest over pants, and then we're going to close the skin in whichever fashion you want to. I usually like to use forward interlocking. A lot of people actually do use absorbable material in the skin underneath the cow because they don't have any intention of going back under there and taking it out. Many times the dairy cows do because they come through the parlor twice a day. So that's your ins and outs of a C-section. It's completely clinician preference, on how you want to do those. But there are a lot of differences in routine surgical practices, okay, like using non-absorbable materials on the linea or in your deepest closing layer. Absolutely remember, no matter what you're doing, you're cutting your way in and you're sewing your way out. 2 goals of surgery are tissue apposition and eliminating dead space. Okay, I remember that from 2002 when Michael Tilson taught me that in vet school. You have to close dead space and you have to have tissue apposition. Okay, those are your 2 primary goals. You may have no clue what you're doing, but if you take it apart, just put it back together. Okay, and all things do no harm. I've done plenty of surgeries with the book open over on the counter. I've done open chest by myself in the middle of the night. You learn how to bag animals with your foot, and do all kind of stuff. And you have the book open while left foot, and you can turn pages with your right elbow, and you just figure it out. You just do it. But it all boils down to cutting your way in, sewing your way out, close dead space, eliminate dead space, and have post tissue margins. All right, any questions?